Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the SoulJourn, where we take you along a musical journey combining sound and meditations and lots of different instruments, all rooted in where I come from, which is the jazz tradition. How's everybody feeling tonight? Thank you so much for tuning in. Give me a second as I just take my bass off. Now, I'm wondering how everybody is feeling on this kind of rainy day. And I'm wondering today how we're all feeling deep down in our hearts. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of silence. So, silence is one of those things which is or can be a little bit tricky to navigate. Silence and sound contrast each other like yin and yang, like dark and light, loud and soft, the natures of sound. They contrast each other. And of course, our world is full of sound. And as we look into or begin to delve into the topic of silence this evening on the SoulJourn, we're going to be looking at why silence is important, but also why it can be difficult to attain. Okay, so when I say sound can be a difficult thing to attain, think about your mind. Now, I've talked about the monkey mind before, and that's kind of a comical way in Taoism to talk about how the mind is always jumping and shifting. Last week we talked about cultivating stillness, and we talked about the challenges of being not only physically still, but still inwardly. Last week, I let you all know that the average person on a daily basis thinks about 60,000 thoughts during the time that they're awake. So whether that's 10, 12, 15 hours, in 15 hours, 60,000 thoughts. That's a lot of thoughts. And certainly, based upon whatever you might be dealing with at any given moment, certainly it can feel like more and it can feel very stressful. So for some people, when we talk about the importance of silence, people will say to me, Heshima, how in the world can I quiet my mind? It's impossible to quiet my mind because I have so much stress, I have so much pressure, and I don't need to really talk about the different pressures that we're all kind of facing on a different level in this time where we're dealing with the challenges of employment or lack thereof, how to pay the bills, how to deal with and navigate new and challenging living circumstances if we're not used to being crowded into a house with people or having to stay in the house, right? So those are just some of those challenges. So stillness, quiet, the idea of quiet. Quiet is important. And when you live in a world where there's lots of outer noise, which I'll talk to you all about in a minute, even my own experience, cultivating inner silence is that much more important. So what are some of the noises that I hear on a daily basis right outside my window? Motorcycles, cars, trucks racing up and down the street, people who are not normally home 24 hours a day, blasting music out of their windows, blasting music out of their car windows as they drive by. The sounds of people in apartments above and below me, talking and making their own noises, shuffling, walking, etc. I'm a person who has spent a great deal of time cultivating inner silence. I like quiet. Quiet for me helps me to balance out sounds that may sometimes be triggering. So it's almost as if the sounds on the outside are crashing up against my own psyche. And that has a lot to do with the way that I was raised, some traumas in my own childhood. So silence can be very important to balance out the noise in the very noisy world that we're living in right now. And we actually live in on a pretty regular basis, but we notice it more when we're sitting still or forced to sit still. For some people, the idea of having to be silent can be a triggering thing. For people to sit still and the thought of not having a radio on or a television set or multiple television sets, which I don't know how people manage that one. I can't even manage one. I don't own a TV set. However, many people use the television and they use radio and they use telephone conversations and they use video games and they use all of the external stimuli to avoid dealing with their inner noise, if you will. What are some of those inner noises? Well, some of those inner noises are the traumas, the things that we have not yet dealt with, maybe might not even be aware that we have to deal with because we become very good at suppressing, right? However, beyond that, what are some of those inner noises? The inner noises of that self-talk that happens on a daily basis where we find ourselves judging ourselves, we find ourselves bombarding ourselves with pressure to excel, right? So silence or sound or the thought of having to try to balance out or deal with either of them or both of them can be a very jarring thing for a lot of people. So we're going to talk a little bit about the idea of the importance of silence. So there's a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, one of my favorite Buddhist writers, but you don't have to be a Buddhist to enjoy his writing. His writing is very accessible. And the quote says, "Silence is essential. We all need silence as much as we need air, just as much as the plants need air. If our minds are crowded with words and thoughts, there is no room for us." Think about that for a second. If our minds are crowded with words and thoughts, there is no room for us. What does that mean? If you take a moment and you reflect on that, what does that mean to you? Now, I can tell you what it means to me. When we allow our thoughts, and when Thich Nhat Hanh is talking about words, he's talking about self-talk. He's talking about the words that circulate in our mind, right? When those words and those thoughts are constantly filling and moving and swirling to the point where you, may not be sleeping deeply because your mind is racing even though you are physically trying to sleep. The moments where you may attempt to have some peace and quiet. Maybe your children have gone to sleep. Maybe your partner has gone to sleep and you want to just sit stare out the window and have some peace and quiet. But the thoughts that are constantly racing, and the words and the self-talk and the talk from the outside world that you've absorbed is filling our minds so much that there's no room for us to really discover who we are, what our purpose is, what direction we'd like to take in life, right? So the importance of taking time to sort, and I'm going to lead you in a little while, not right now, a little later on in the show, through a guided meditation to begin to sort through and to filter those thoughts, not to empty our minds necessarily, but instead to learn how to be present to those thoughts and those words and to make sense of them. So I'd like to take a second and play a piece of music for you. I was going to play Peace by the great pianist, Mr. Horace Silver, but I've decided, in light of what I'm talking about, to play a piece that I played last week. And I'm going to play it again. It's called Don't Be Afraid of the Space. And I wrote this piece for my mentor, who transitioned just about 3.5 weeks ago now, Onaji Allen Gums, rest in peace. And so we would often talk about inner space. And Onaji would say, man, everybody's talking about outer space, but inner space is the place, right? And he would kind of take that from or expand on the idea of the words of the great Sun Ra. And so on National Jazz Day, I honor these two, International Jazz Day, I honor these two giants. For Onaji, don't be afraid of the space. What do we mean when we talk about not being afraid of the space? It's very difficult for many of us because we've been taught in our society, and I'm talking about for those who might be tuning in from the United States because the context is different in other places in the world. But in our society, we've been taught to value productivity, busyness, and we've been taught the importance of pushing down our emotions, pushing down the things, suppressing the things that hurt us or the things that make us afraid. And where do we push them? Well, our emotional closet is here. But the interesting thing is that, as Thich Nhat Hanh talks about quite often, he says, when we breathe deeply and return to our heart, we return home. So if we're pushing everything, if we're pushing our emotional clutter, if we're pushing the stress and the worry and the fear from the things that we have to confront on a daily basis, like how to survive, how will we pay for our children's college, university cost, how will our children survive when we're no longer there to take care of them or to protect them? And as a parent, I can tell you that that doesn't really go away. My son is 23 years old and it doesn't go away. And my nieces and nephews and godchildren are in their 20s and it doesn't go away. I still am concerned for them. So when all of those things, if we're stuffing those concerns and those fears and those insecurities on top of the anxiety that comes along with it, sometimes the depression or the frustration that people deal with, the mental health issues that people deal with, if we push them deep inside, we're filling our proverbial home with clutter. There's no space. And in order for us to deal with the noise outside, we first have to deal with the noise inside. I believe in being transparent. And so I can tell you that even though I have a pretty well developed contemplative practice, meditation practice, this situation that we currently find ourselves in the world has challenged me to dig up some things that maybe I didn't know were there inside of me. Everybody, everybody has to face the inner space. We have to deal with the inner talk, the self-talk, with the thoughts, the disparaging thoughts, the thoughts that keep us from believing in ourselves enough to move forward and to take the chances, to believe in our dreams, and to pursue our goals and to follow our passions. So dealing with those inner spaces, but most of us are used to filling our minds and our hearts with activity so that we don't have to, we fill our lives with activity so that we don't have to face what's in our mind and our heart. So it's very important to not be afraid to face those things that are inside of us. Today, we're going to do something different in talking with the wonderful producers at Studio 2622. We decided it would be a wonderful idea to begin to invite guests on to ask questions, to have short discussions with me. And I think that that's a wonderful idea. So today we have Christine Mello. Christine is going to present some questions about how to deal with some of those difficult things that all of us have to deal with. How are you doing today, Christine?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
So one of the questions that I have actually has to do with when approaching silence, when we're also dealing with mourning. And this is happening in the large musical community now as we speak. So one of the hardest things about mourning is silence. And we as artists are mourning the loss of not only our work and our purpose and our passion, but now we're starting to lose our mentors and colleagues to this virus. And, how do we as vessels of sound cope with that silence in addition to dealing with our own mourning? With grounding practices.
That's a wonderful and very important and very timely, pertinent question. So there's a couple of things that are embedded or built into that question. More than one facet to that answer. First of all, honoring the truth of what we feel in any given moment. Buddhist and Taoist practices are very existentialist in nature. In the Zen practice, we talk about the fact that just like the cherry blossom, from the moment we're born, we're all dying. Now, that sounds pretty morose, pretty melancholy, but really what it is it's an encouragement for us to value each moment that we live in. The cherry blossom, for those of you who live in Philadelphia, know the cherry blossom comes and it doesn't stick around for too long. It's beautiful and then boom, it's gone. So it seems like in the moment, just as we are beginning to see or recognize the beauty, it's gone. And in the Zen and in the Taoist practice, what we do is we learn to honor the moment and honor the reality of impermanence. Right? The fact that everything is, in fact, only momentary. Beauty is momentary. Pain is momentary. Although it can seem to last for quite a long time. So it's important to honor, first of all, the truth of what you're feeling in a given moment. So if we're mourning the loss of our work, if we're mourning the loss of friends, colleagues, mentors, and I know you just lost a very important person in your life, my condolences to you.
Thank you.
Honoring the truth of what we feel and not trying to put on the front of being strong, right? Because that's one of those other tricky things that we're taught in our society. We have to be strong and push through. But I try to use this analogy. If you suffer a great wound and you're bleeding, and you say, well, I'm going to keep pushing. Well, if you keep pushing, but you're bleeding, eventually, whether you like it or not, your body is going to say, stop. It's going to stop you. It won't allow you to continue to move forward because you don't have the energy. You're losing energy. When we're suffering loss, we're in essence, we're bleeding emotionally. We're something that we were close to has left us. So we feel a hole, we feel a void. So honoring that truth, first of all. And when we begin to honor that truth by sitting with it, because we can't run from it. We can't run from pain because pain is inside of us in the moment that we're feeling it. The Buddha talked about the fact that suffering is a part of life. Not that it's the only part of life, but it is a reality of life. And so the pain that we feel or the suffering that we feel, we have to get to the root of why we're suffering or why we feel pain. And that pain comes from attachment because we're attached to the idea that things are, and it's usually unconscious, right? We don't wake up every day and say, my job is going to last forever. So-and-so is going to be with me forever. It's unconscious that we just kind of get comfortable in our daily life. And when something all of a sudden is taken from us, because we're attached to it, we're feeling the difficulty of letting it go. Am I making sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
We're
It
feeling
really
the
does.
difficulty that comes with letting it go. And why are we struggling to let it go? Are we mourning as we look deeper, as we examine, as we find the courage within ourselves to sit with our truth, be it pain or joy? When we sit with loss and we find the courage to really go inside, are we mourning the loss of the person, or are we mourning the loss of an opportunity to spend more time with the person? Or are we feeling some guilt because maybe we didn't, at a certain point, take advantage of the moments that we did have? Maybe we thought unconsciously that someone or something was going to be there forever. A job, a person, a thing, a landmark in a city, right? And so getting to the why. In one of the grounding practices is really a very childlike practice. You've worked with children, you're a teacher, so you know that even teenagers, even though we tend to associate it with little children, smaller children, teenagers do it as well, and that is constantly asking why. Why do I have to do this? Oh, because this is the rule. Why is this the rule? Well, because so-and-so said it's the rule. Yeah, but why did they say? So the childlike practice of constantly asking why, and each time we ask why, we peel back another layer. Why did the person have to go? Well, because from the moment we're born, we're all dying, and eventually we're all going to physically leave this planet. Why? But why? Were they sick? Were they suffering? Now, if we know that a person was sick or suffering, then we have to deal with the issue of, are we selfishly trying to hold on to them, or do we love them enough to say, I wish them peace and light on their journey, or I wish that the next person that occupies my job has a more amazing experience than I had, or I wish that as the changes that come to our world come, that they bring beautiful and powerful and beneficial things for all. So examining, and a lot of times when we mourn, we're only mourning the attachment to something, but we're not using the opportunity to A, get at the root cause of our motives about why we're mourning, and then B, once we get beyond that painful thing, that occurrence, being able to peel enough layers back to where we begin to celebrate that person, that thing, its contributions, the lessons that it has taught us in our life, and how we are better and richer because of those teachers. Because everything in our life is a teacher. People, occurrences, experiences, everything is a teacher.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I definitely believe that as a teacher, for sure, each experience that we have, be it a job, be it that who we're with, be it, you know, the music that we make or the art that we make, each of it is a learning experience. All of it is a learning experience.
Mm.
And I know that even this is a learning experience itself. And death is a learning experience, and loss of a job, everything is a learning experience. And I have to be comfortable with my silence as I mourn those things, and then learn what they actually gave to me and what I gave to them in return, and celebrate that as a life celebration,
Mhm.
as opposed to the wallowing in the why.
Yes. Another grounding practice, something that we can all do, that occurs to me. Ritual is a part of human existence, right? Regardless of
Yes.
what religious practice we claim, if we claim none at all, uh, but within our cultural parameters, our cultural modalities, we have lots of rituals, right?
Yep.
Holidays are rituals, uh, weddings are rituals, funerals are rituals, but we
Even
can
how
also
we
take,
attend,
we
or
can,
even how we
yeah,
get to work, it's all a
a
ritual.
ritual. The Tao says ritual is the husk of true faith. So it's the outside, it's just the outside. But if we can get to, or even sometimes create our own ritual that we really deeply connect with, or that deeply connects us mutually with the thing or the person that we're mourning the loss of, creating a ritual to honor, creating your own ritual. For instance, in the Afro-Cuban tradition, in the Afro-Cuban spiritual tradition, there is the tradition of making food for our ancestors who have passed on, who have transitioned. And if we happen to know what their favorite dish is, we make their favorite dish and we put it on an altar and light a candle. So I remember that my grandmother loved when I made rice and beans. So she loved my rice and beans because I was her firstborn grandson. So I could make the rice and beans and put it on the altar next to a picture of grandma. And I could sit in the rocking chair that I have that was my grandmother's rocking chair. And I rock and I sit and I can remember the stories and I can laugh. And I can say, wow, I forgot all about that, grandma. Thank you. Right? So then we move from the immediate mourning to peeling back the layers to discovering the lessons, and then we move to the next phase, which is gratitude. Gratitude for the moments we had with that job or with that person or with in that place or whatever the case may be. So we move from mourning to discovery to gratitude.
To being
And then we're
thankful.
able to give thanks for all of the amazing things that we learned and the person that we have become as a result of that person or place or thing's presence in our lives for however long it was there, whether it was for one day or for lots of years.
That is a that is a great, like, I'm tripping over my own words, because that's probably the most positive spin I have heard about taking something that was lost and seeing the good that it actually gave you, even, and what you had mentioned, even if it was for one day, because some of us have lost contracts that haven't even started yet.
Absolutely.
And that's been something that's been really difficult. But seeing that that was there, that itself was a journey unto itself, it does help with the kind of accepting of those emotions and the kind, like I said, to stop the why more than anything.
Well, and then also once we move to gratitude, Christine, we're also able to then realize that even though that person or place or thing is physically gone, because everything lives in ourselves, we are the continuation of. So, your teacher, for instance, every time you pick up your cello, so I was watching a wonderful video of your teacher that you posted, and he was talking about, and he was hilarious, by the way.
The upper position, yep.
I can't get this G in tune when I play it slow, but if I play it fast, it sounds, oh no, it's flat. I'll never play in tune. Oh my goodness.
Which is how this is why my personal story with Lynn Harrell is that I studied with Orlando Cole and Meta Watts, and they introduced me to him years ago, and we were working together. He had been in Aspen doing songs my father had taught me. He was playing through his father's songbooks, and I was doing that with the Schubert Winterreise, and we were working through those. He really liked them. Some time had passed. We were going to begin them again. COVID, of course.
Yeah.
And but the one thing I loved about it was his humor, and what I was looking forward to is sharing with him, why am I having a problem with my fourth finger at the moment? And I watched that video because it is in fact exactly what he's describing. And I really took my plan was in fact to kind of disappear from Facebook for about a week, as you know. And I saw that, and that just to me was like, Lynn Harrell was larger than life. Meta Watts was larger than life. Orlando Cole was larger than life. I can't hide. And I need to accept, give thanks, mourn the loss, and see that I can continue the future as a continuation of these ideas. Because there's a bunch of us.
So one thing, and not to cut you off, but one thing that you said, which is very powerful, is this. You said that he had been in Colorado playing through his father's songbooks.
Yes.
Right? You see, he was actually demonstrating what I just was talking about. He was going to play through his father's songbooks. He was extending the legacy of his father.
Yes.
You can extend his legacy by playing the pieces that you were intending to work on with him, and they can become your ritual. Now, or you can play the songs that he was playing from his father's songbook. But here's the thing. My teacher, one of my teachers, often would say to me, because in the jazz tradition, we learn through stories. It's an oral tradition. So in addition to learning technique, we learn as our teachers tell us the stories of where they came from, how they're connected to X, how X is connected to Y, and A is connected to B. And we weave a web of legacy, right? And that legacy gives us a sense of responsibility to continue our growth after our teachers are gone. And one of my teachers, who still happens to still be alive, would say to me often, Heshima, if you ever forget something, if you're trying to remember something, there's a trick. You close your eyes and you look at my face, you'll hear my voice telling you what it is you're trying to remember. It happens with my grandmother every day. I hear my grandmother's voice every day, and I'm like, esta vieja, this woman's like haunting me. She's been gone since 2006. But it's because sometimes we have to be put in situations where the stories are triggered.
You're right.
So now you have these amazing memories and this amazing legacy. My suggestion to you would be, I mean, for me, your ritual is clear. You play the songs.
I think so.
You play the songs that you were going to study with him or refresh your memory with, and you play and you light a candle, or you put his favorite food on the thing, or put a glass of wine if you like the glass of wine, and just put it there and put his picture there so that you remember. And as you play, your morning is transformed, because our morning, the lotus flower grows in any condition. That's why it's such a powerful flower. The lotus flower, you can throw a lotus seed into the mud and it will grow. You can throw a lotus seed into the garbage and it will grow. But that's a metaphor also for the idea that our conditions can be transformed by our intention. So do we intend to grow and move forward? Or are we going to stay stuck in the mud? And we can stay stuck in the mud of our suffering, and that's certainly our right. But I would propose to you this, that when we decide to stay stuck in the mud, we rob the world of beautiful opportunities to receive the gifts that we have to offer.
That's the one. It might in by silencing our voices, or by, being silent, of course, is meditative practice, but I mean in cutting off our voice when approaching the gratefulness. It's just, you're right. You're totally right. It's like robbing not only ourselves, but our friends, our family, the world. The reason we make music is for other people and for ourselves and for aesthetics, beauty, healing, everything. Perseverance, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely.
Is all we can do, and accept and be grateful for what we at least have had and what we know is to come. It won't always be like this. So
gratitude is a powerful tool to move us forward, because you can't express gratitude and stay stuck. Gratitude is like a chisel and a hammer. It breaks away all of the things that are holding us and allows us to become free. And
right.
It transforms our feelings of suffering into feelings of gratitude, joy, and even re-energizes us to move forward with our own mission. Because there is a saying that the greatest gurus train their disciples until they no longer need their guru. So your teacher has had his path, and his path was to get you to the point where he has gotten you now. And now it's your job to continue the journey. I'm going to lead us all through a guided meditation now to deal with this. So I want to thank you for your question.
Thank you so much. I think it
was probably very important for a lot of people who are watching the show to hear.
Thank you so much. What you said spoke to my heart. I know it spoke to many other hearts. So I really thank you so much. Gives me something to think about during these next difficult days. Thank you.
My pleasure. And, I'm always here to reach out when you need me.
Thank you so much.
So thank you, Christine, for that wonderful conversation. Thank you for that question. Now, what I'd like to do, we only have another couple of minutes, but I'm going to lead us through a brief guided meditation. And the meditation is on precisely what Christine has brought up in this segment, which is how do we deal with loss. So I'd like to use quartz crystal bowl ask you to get comfortable sitting right where you are. Maybe you're sitting on the floor, maybe you're lying on the floor, maybe you're in your most comfortable chair. However you find yourself to be comfortable, sitting still, and begin to breathe with me. Just breathing in and breathing out and stilling the body. Relaxing all tension and resistance in the body. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to close your eyes and look inward. Thich Nhat Hanh says that silence is a sound. I'm going to do something very different with this meditation today. Yes, silence is a sound. What does that mean? When we get very quiet, we can begin to hear all of the things that our mind is saying that we just don't hear all the time because of so much going on around us. And what I'd like you to do is, as the mind and as your thoughts are swirling around like a big bowl of soup, you know how when the soup starts to boil, it starts to swirl around? I'd like you to identify one thing that's swirling around in the soup of your mind. Breathing in and out. And as you see that one thing, maybe you see it, maybe you hear it. I want you to reach down with your soup spoon and scoop that thing right up out of the pot. And I want you to look at it. Breathing in and out, observing it without judging it. Look at it from lots of different angles. From the left side, the right side, the top, the bottom. And breathing in and out, notice that thing, or that word, or that thought. Thoughts are things. And as you observe that thing, or that word, I want you to see that within that thing that you're observing, that thing that you're attached to, that thing that bothers you and plagues you on a pretty regular basis, I want you to begin to release your attachment to it. With your eyes closed, looking at it and seeing how there's a little tiny string from your heart to that thing. And I want you to release that attachment. It's become such a part of you that as you begin to release the attachment, you may even feel a little bit of discomfort. But you have to release that thing in order to make space for more of what you want in your life. That thing that you're attached to, maybe you haven't been able to let go of a relationship. I want you to release the attachment. Maybe you haven't been able to let go of the idea of something that was once a part of your life, no longer being a part of your life. But if you hold on to the attachment, it remains in your life not as a source of joy, but as a source of suffering. it eventually becomes a regret. And as you release the attachment to that thing or that person or that experience, you make space, expansive, wide space inside your heart and inside your mind for more beautiful, enriching relationships, experiences, adventures. As Joseph Campbell, the great author, said, when you follow your bliss, doors open where there were no doors before. But in order to follow your bliss, you have to release attachments to all the things that weigh you down. You have to make space in your heart and in your mind and allow yourself to become quiet. Can you feel the power of that stillness in your own heart right now? Feel that silence, even if it's for a moment. Silence is a sound. So what I'd like to do is, as I often do, leave you with one more piece of music. It's a beautiful song from the Sacred Suites by the great composer Duke Ellington, called Come Sunday. And so I want to thank you for tuning in this week. Thank you to Studio 2622, and I'll be back with you next week. Also remember that if you're enjoying the show, please send your comments. If you are an organization or an individual who'd like to partner with the SoulJourn and with Studio 2622, you can reach out to the email addresses that are available on the Facebook site. Until next week, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. And remember, everything only lasts for a moment. Lord, dear Lord above, God Almighty God, please look down and see Lord, dear Lord above, God Almighty please look down and see my people through. I believe that God could send me love in the sky. I don't mind the gray skies, 'cause they're just clouds passing by. Lord, dear Lord above, God Almighty God, please look down and see my people through. Thank you. Have a great night.
Hi, welcome back
Hey.
to 2622. Thanks for joining us today. So we've been doing a lot of mindfulness, education, and performance content, and we would love to have you participate. If you have a show idea, or you'd like to join us on the SoulJourn, or you'd like to join us in any one of our other programs, please reach out to us at one of the ways you can reach out to us below. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have email. Additionally, we also have a Patreon. You can find all of the information on the Patreon. That will put the link below so you can find that. Thanks so much for joining us. Be well, be safe. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much for joining us.